Sup nerds, I'm Tom.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Aaron.
This is the newest version of Imperial Settlers. Unless there's a new one that came out. I don't know when you're watching this. But
good intro.
It's talkie time now. So if you want to see our thoughts on the original Imperial Settlers and also the roll and write version, we do have reviews for those on our channel. You can check that out. But this is mostly based off of the Imperial Settlers, the original one. But it kind of like ramps it up a bit, adds a couple more things. There's kind of like a worker placement-y action selection portion, and you go sailing, and there's no common deck. Yeah, but it is similar enough to where those things I listed are mostly all of the things.
Yeah. So in this game, you're still building a tableau of cards that are going to be triggering, producing things. You're going to be getting cards that give you like effects that that are called features. They do different things each round, like when you do certain actions. And then you have the action cards, which you can spend resources or your little worker people to trigger effects that give you victory points or other things like drawing cards or other resources.
One of the really cool things about this game is the different decks have difficulty levels associated with them. Mm-hmm. And so depending on who you're playing with, if you're a very experienced gamer, you can grab one of the more complicated decks and still have a challenging game against newer gamers and have a simpler, easier to play deck with a much more straightforward strategy. So you're both, like, your decks are asymmetric, but they're having a lot easier time and like having to think less because they're trying to figure out the game, where you are still having just as much fun. You're not like, okay, well, I'm going to play this dumbed down version so that you guys can get it. One of the greatest things about games.
Honestly, we talked a lot about how you play the game in the original Imperial Settlers video, so we're mostly just going to talk about what's different. And the biggest difference is there is this little action selection wheel out here. We have these 5 little things that you shuffle around because they're adjacent to each other, can matter. And you put little action pawns out there to do those actions. And actually, that's the main way that you actually get resources because there's no production phase. There's kind of one at the beginning of the game, but from then on out, you're just going to, use that to produce and pick a card and get the resources on there. So that's really cool. You can also, again, their adjacency matters because you can spend food, tomapple or whatever, and then you take the token that you've placed previously, you move it to one of the adjacent tiles to the left or the right, and you flip it over to its exhausted side. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. There is also the sailing, which is the biggest thing, I think, because it's another big way that you get resources. You take a sail action to put boats out there, and you either pillage to gain resources and some points from the card, or you can conquer them in order to get it's just a new building that you have with new abilities and whatnot. But it has a near and a far deck, where the far deck is better and the near deck is not as good, but you have to put a fish to go further, which reminds me an awful lot of Champions of Midgard, mm-hmm. where like you have to get food for that longer journey. Mm-hmm. That's about the only reason why there's a comparison there.
Yeah. And if you want to conquer it, you actually have to get an axe, which is a special resource mm-hmm. that will allow you to conquer it. If you don't have that and you just either take your boat out there or a boat with a fish, you just have to pillage, which is still good because it gets you all those extra resources.
And that token can also be used to raise, or I think in this game it's called raid, but all you do is you exhaust somebody's card so mm-hmm. that they can't use it that round. You don't eliminate that card completely, which is, I will say, a lot better than the base game.
I do think that this is a more gamery game than Imperial Settlers. It, honestly, coming out this much time later, it's probably more modernized and comparable to modern games, and that there is the worker placement and there's more going on. It does get messier because in Imperial Settlers, you had everyone had their center column and they're just building cards off of it. Mm-hmm. And in this one, you don't have that central organization, so you're trying to clump your cards and this is over here, this is over here. So it can definitely get kind of messy.
Well, when we were playing, we were still having resources by the same features and actions, but
it's not laid out specifically to tell you to do that.
And also in there they had the artwork. Common and non-common. Yeah. So it was like organization was built into the game.
Absolutely. Really. And in this one also, because you actually have to exhaust or tap cards when you use them, mm-hmm. you can't just have all your cards next to each other, because then you're having to move stuff over to tap it. And playing this game, I actually said that this is one where I almost feel like it would be easier to play as an app, because there is a fair amount of bookkeeping in playing the game, where it'd be kind of nice if there was something just taking care of that for you. But I definitely like this version better. Like this is again, it's more gamery. There's a little bit more going on. The worker placement and stuff. All the things we mentioned. It's great.
Yeah, it is overall more advanced.
Yeah.
I will echo that sentiment. It is definitely more advanced. It definitely feels like a game that's for like hardcore gamers because having to actually take the action to do a harvest instead of just being given all the things you need to make your buildings, you actually have to make a choice. Like, okay, do I want to build a building for free, or do I want to get more work, these actual workers, so I can tend to all of my buildings that I have built and use those actions, or do I want to harvest resources from one of my cards so that I have the resources to build more cards? There's definitely a lot of decisions to be made there, and it's really cool that this is all randomly put out there so that it is going to change up every game. You're not going to have like, oh, you definitely want to harvest and then sale. Like that may not be an option. To do a harvest and then flip over to a sale, you'd actually have to play your harvest and play another token to get the sale. Like it's not going to be as easy.
The only real complaint that I have with this game is so first of all, I like the fact that they give you 6 different decks versus in the base box for Imperial Settlers it's a 4-player game. There's 4 decks, so there's not a lot of variety. But because there's no common deck, you pretty much have to just go with the strategy that your faction has, and it feels like there's mostly one strategy. I mean, of course, there's a difference in the order which you draw the cards, the order you play them, the order that you activate them, and then you have these over here. So there's still a decent amount of variety, but you can't just draw from the common deck and just get, oh, this one says I get a lot of points for every red building I get. It's definitely goading you towards the one thing. Like one guy's really good at sailing, so you're probably going to sail a lot. One guy's really good fast game, one guy's late game, one guy is storing a lot of stuff, one guy gets a lot of workers. But it's like, you kind of just figure out what the deck is good at, and then you mostly do that. Which is not that bad when there's a lot of options, a lot of different decks to play. But I kind of wish there were some common cards I could draw from. Some place I could draw cards other than my own deck, mostly.
This would be a good second step for people who enjoy Villainous and having like your one
I thought you were gonna say Imperial Settlers. I'm like, well, yeah.
No, but for Villainous, you have your one deck that like you have a thing that you're supposed to do,
right?
And this it's a little different. It's a tableau builder. You're trying to flesh out something completely different, but having that one kind of goal that's specific to this deck that's unique would be a good step up from like, okay, you played Villainous and this would be something.
And if that describes you, you should definitely click the purchase link in the description box down below. Get yourself a copy of this. We'll put a purchase link to Imperial Settlers down there, some expansions, just some like nice glasses to have in your kitchen cabinet.
This is the best version. Get this and then get Imperial Settlers. I think the roll and right is get it if you are completionist and you want to have everything.
Yeah, but yeah.
Do you want us to do that again?
Either way, subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.